Hello, so I'm Natalie Porter. I run the Happy Plants bedding plant brand, and since I joined the industry, one of my main fascinations has been how we as an industry can appeal to a wider range of people. That brought me to the study of consumer behaviour, and I guess this is sort of a whistle-stop tour of the things I think might be pertinent to consider to secure the future of horticulture. So first of all, the things we're going to cover. First thing I want to look at is the things we already needed to consider to engage with future consumers. A lot of things that have changed over the last 20, 30 years will have an effect on people's behaviour as shoppers. What did we already need to look at to stay relevant? How the virus has affected the behaviour of the pre-existing horticultural consumer. The virus has affected everyone. That generation isn't going to be exempt. And how do we need to change what we do to account for their new behaviours? Then we're going to look at the consumers that lockdown has inspired and accelerated into gardening, the one silver lining of what has been a crisis for our industry, and then how we can use these considerations to evolve our businesses and to collectively to evolve our industry. So starting with the things we already needed to consider. One of my main worries over the last few years has been that gardening as an inherited skill and hobby has been diminished by the influences of technology. So this is the idea that we've got whole generations now who missed out on green time in favour of screen time. So instead of mucking in out in the gardens with their parents or their grandparents, they've been inside on Facebook, Instagram, PlayStations, etc. Are we going to end up with a generation of older people who never age into gardening because they have never had the exposure at an earlier age? So the second was the worry that the brand horticulture, as we've known it in recent years, relies too heavily on waiting for people to age into its relevant demographic. So they're waiting for people to organically mature, retire, find themselves twiddling their thumbs, fondly remember time as a child in the garden, and decide to make their way outdoors. But when we're looking at younger generations who have only ever lived in a world where they are the blue dot at the centre of the map and the whole world revolves around them, can we bank on that to continue to be the case? So before lockdown, my main focus consumer was this blue dot consumer, where every piece of information, every product they could ever want was available directly to their doorstep. So if they ordered a pizza, the little pizza follows the roads on the map to the blue dot and arrives at their doorstep. The same with an Uber. The context of their world pivoted around a blue dot on the map. Because of that, they tended only to spend time in physical stores if the visit also offered them an experience or an Instagrammable moment. So things like visual merchandising, etc., were needing to be a priority. The experience of visiting a garden centre held its own because it was slightly separated from a high street in that it is a day out and a destination. But was that necessarily going to continue to be enough? And how are we going to deal with this customer who had likely had no previous exposure to gardening on any significant level? So these are the things I was considering, worrying about, assembling task forces to tackle, and then the virus moved the goalposts. So first thing we're going to look at here is a map or a graph of the Google searches for buy plants over the last 5 years. And as you would expect, the all-time 5-year high shoots up roundabout on the right-hand side, having been fairly steady and consistent for the last 5 years. If we zone in on that as the last 12 months, you can see that that peak happened between the 15th and the end of March, which is, as we all know, the time that lockdown came into force. So be it through boredom, stir craziness, or just a particularly lucky run of weather, lockdown inspired the British public to embrace their outdoor spaces. And the combination of school closures, furlough leave, work from home, closure of pubs, closure of retail, all of those things consistently came into line, creating a unique set of circumstances to allow this to happen. This isn't going to happen again. Never again in our lifetime, or probably most people's lifetime, will there ever be a situation where so many people spontaneously become inspired to go outside and get gardening. We cannot afford to let this opportunity pass us by. We've got people from all walks of life suddenly interested by what we do, and to keep them on board, keep them nurtured and inspired, we urgently need to consider their wants and needs as consumers. So that's what I hope to do here. So having had one focused consumer before lockdown, I'm now looking into 3, and I will introduce you to them through the next 3 slides. So looking first of all at the pre-existing core garden centre customer, I think we would all agree tends to be an older person. Their visits to the garden centre allow them socialisation, a day out, and access to their gardening supplies. So now we're having to consider things like the fact that social distancing inhibits the social element of their garden centre visit. We're having to consider that 57%, over half of them surveyed, said that they didn't yet feel safe to visit a physical store for non-essential items. We're also looking at the fact that 80% of 57-year-olds are saying they can now use the garden centre website, and 70% of them consider themselves confident, not just able, confident to use the internet to order goods for delivery. Now, lockdown necessitated this. Most of the older generation are considered a shielding category, and the only way they could get hold of goods and food and anything they could ever need was to have it delivered to their doorstep. So it created a situation where lots of people had to use the internet very quickly. The HTA's got some really interesting figures on smartphone ownership as well, which reflect the same finding, that lots of older people got themselves online at that same time, and that's inevitably going to affect how they behave and how they consume moving forward. So I've called him the evolved elderly for now. Next one across, before lockdown, we would have called her the house-proud Hincher. So if you don't know Hincher, there's an online cleaning lady called Mrs. Hinch, who is an absolute social media phenomenon. She's got 3.5 million followers in her Hinch army, and they hang on her every word. For example, she once mentioned that she liked to use a particular cleaning cloth to use a particularly obscure shelf in her house, or something bizarre, and all of a sudden sales of that cleaning cloth went up 10,000%. So this is a lady who's got a serious amount of influence, and it is a group of people that are very strongly driven by each other and by social media and sharing their experiences and their achievements in their houses. So before lockdown, they previously focused their efforts on the insides of their houses. A couple of weeks in, the weather was good, they had a run out of indoor space or given up trying to keep cleaning after their kids, and they needed a new area to decorate, to improve, and to share as an achievement, and a new sense of achievement area, basically. So they used the same ideas to improve their outdoor spaces. So if we quickly look at the main things that this Mrs. Hinch lady tells people to do, she directs them towards a particular cleaning product, which is called the pink stuff, and is used to clean everything you can ever imagine, including your pet budgie, I think. And she recommends to them that they use loads of grey paint, all the walls are grey, carpets are grey, and she buys grey furniture and sort of shows them images including grey furniture and encourages them to do the same. She also loves to use decorations and ornaments and rugs and scatter cushions. Now, if we look at genuine pictures of these people's gardens, and there's just a couple here, that it's almost a parody. I could find thousands. You can see they've done exactly the same things outside. So on the left, we've got a lady cleaning some paving area with the pink stuff, and on the right, we've got a garden with the walls painted grey cushions on the sofa, carpets and scatter cushions. I don't get this thing about outdoor rugs, but apparently this is what happens now, is that these people put the same methods and techniques they've used indoors to make outdoor living spaces. I was a bit stuck for what to call them, and I read an article recently by Jane Lawler and described a very similar type of person as a garden decorator. So that's what I've gone with. So this lady we will call the garden decorator. The last type of consumer I think has been accelerated into gardening is previously the houseplant parent. So this is a type of person who normally was time poor, but furlough leave gave them extra time to make use of the outdoor spaces. That might be a windowsill, it might be a small courtyard garden, it might be a big derelict area, an allotment, I don't know. But this person takes care of the plants very seriously. He wants to know the Latin name, he wants to know the absolute best way to look after them. He quite often sees them as collectibles. That's been the case with houseplants, may become the case with outdoor plants, but there's rare plant indexes and you tick them off and you hashtag them, and etc. He advocates sustainable practices, and he appreciates the health and well-being benefits of having plants. Previously that was indoor plants, in terms of the oxygenation, the stress relief, etc. He is now appreciating the benefits of gardening. As we all know, gardening is magic. So that's our three. We've got the evolved elderly, the garden decorator, and the plant parent. The next thing I like to do when I create a new consumer profile is to start with an empty garden and use my extremely advanced PowerPoint skills to overlap loads of different images onto there and create something that might look like what they would do with this space. So starting with the evolved elderly, pretty much what my nan's garden looked like growing up. He's got an immaculate real lawn, which is pristine and perfect. Got a greenhouse, he's growing some tomatoes in there, and in his flower bed with the little white picket fence, he's got roses and foxgloves and traditional classic varieties. Plants to him are his pride and joy. They help him keep himself mobile. It's a form of exercise to him and a hobby, but he will choose classically named varieties, things he's already done well with. So he's a traditional gardener, let's call him. Now, the main change for this guy is that for the time being, at least, he's possibly going to need click and collect or home delivery to continue to have access to the plants. He's not feeling safe enough to go outdoors yet, and he has learned the internet, so that has become an option for him, whereas previously he would have struggled. So that's him. Then we move on to the garden decorator. So exactly the same patch, exactly the same base image, base garden here, but we've painted the fence grey. We've got decorations on there, we've got artificial turf, we've got the absolutely necessary garden rug. The furniture and plants are there, but only as decorative ornaments. They would probably choose a plant based on it being orange rather than it being a herbaceous perennial with various other attributes and benefits. So the decisions are made based on instant impact and social recommendations, and Facebook and Instagram have huge influence to this audience. So that's the garden decorator's little garden. Then we move on to the plant parent. To him, plants should be functional. So we've got veg plants, we've got pollinators, we've got in there as well, we've got compost heap, we've got water, but the sustainable credentials are also of a huge influence to decision making, and the appearance of the plants is likely secondary to that. If you use YouTube or TikTok, you will find lots of content aimed at these guys. So they are still driven by socials, but more about the how-to videos and the life hack videos rather than the instant impact that we saw with the garden decorator. So each and every category and corner of horticulture now needs to consider, for me, how accessible and appealing they are to each of these evolved consumers. This needs to happen for us to continue to engage them, make sure that they don't just sort of go back to work, have a bit less time available to them, and suddenly they drop off the radar, which I think would be a crying shame at this point. So using my category, bedding plants, I looked at each of them and considered what we might need to change to continue to appeal to them. So for me, the evolved elderly, the product doesn't need to change, but perhaps the mean of access. Skipping across to the right to the houseplant parent, who is now the plant parent, bedding probably isn't going to appeal to him. It's not particularly functional, you can't eat it for the most part, and it isn't particularly the most carbon friendly or bee friendly of products. So he'll probably stick with other corners of the industry. But if we look at the garden decorator, then I think she could be our ideal target bedding plant consumer. And I'd like to try to explain why. So for me, she loves bright colours, instant impact. She wants to redecorate regularly, so it doesn't really matter that they're a one-year crop. Easy care products, low maintenance, instant gardening. When she's back at work, time pressures come into play. It's something that she can pick up and put on the patio and have the same immediate impact and replenish it regularly. One of the main reasons she appeals to me something I haven't really touched on yet, but in bedding, our price points have been stuck for quite a long time, and this is perhaps an opportunity where this person doesn't have any preconceptions over perceived value. So this could be our way to find a better margin. So if we look, for example, on that topic at the price of sunflower seeds. So this is a clip from a website called Just Seed, and they sell Mr. Fothergill's, which is top branded sunflower seeds, 70 seeds for £1.35. Now, I think if you tried to put that price up, as it is, as it's packaged, the person who uses that product would realise, and there'd probably be a bit of a protest. But if you look at another way of presenting the same product, as has been the case with this company Growbar, then there are ways of finding a better margin out of repackaging and repurposing the same product. So Growbar, they make these bars that appeal to me because they look like chocolate bars, which I suspect is why they appeal to so many people. But they are explained, you just unwrap the bar, you add water, and you grow your seeds. Now they are marketed like this. You can see on the left the image of the sunflowers erupting from what looks like a chocolate bar, and you can see the place it is being marketed is sort of a mainstream fashion, sort of younger facing website. And by doing so, by disguising the fact that this is in reality 10, 12 sunflower seeds in a block of dirt, they are charging £12 for this product. So it's a very basic product that everybody knows how much it should cost. With a bit of clever marketing, all of a sudden they're commanding a serious price for it and a serious margin from it as well. And this is something that is an opportunity and a possibility for what we do. You know, if we sell someone in Pattians in a 6-pack, they have a preconceived value of what that should cost. But if we put them in a fancy container and dress them up with a big label and a ribbon and a bow and whatever it is, we might be able to use this new consumer to find a way to get ourselves a bigger slice of the pie. And that seems like something the industry has been needing for a while. And I hope it's something that we can capitalise on and use to our advantage. So in conclusion, we possibly need to consider improving the accessibility of what we do, both for the older customer who's currently a bit scared to go to the garden centre, and the new customer who, when they go back to work, probably doesn't have the free time to spend browsing. So we possibly need to look at whether we can do click and collect, home delivery, etc. We have an opportunity to tailor our product range. And when we do so, we should be looking at which of these new consumers we're looking to appeal to. So plants have a very different purpose to each of them, and we can take this into consideration and create product ranges that are facing towards them. Now, the main one for me is social media holds the key, with the new consumers especially, who are the ones that we have the biggest task to keep on side. Shareability of a product holds value. Value added content where we're giving them videos of how to use the product that they've just bought. A lot of things using influencers. If they've seen somebody else do something and have something, they are made to want it. If it's got a particular communicable name, a friendly name, that's easy to remember and shareable and fun, that's gonna play a role in their decision making. And I think it is just a case of across the board, as we move forward and move out of this, we need to be proactive and we need to be collaborative, and we need to blooming well make sure that we keep these people gardening past lockdown. Thank you.